Rodrigo sat behind the polished mahogany desk in his high-rise office, the city sprawling beneath him like a glittering tapestry. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the skyline, with its shimmering lights reflecting the wealth and power he commanded. He was in the final stages of sealing a lucrative deal with a group of investors, their suits sharp and their laughter boisterous, creating an atmosphere thick with ambition and promise. "Gentlemen, I assure you this investment will yield returns like you've never seen before," Rodrigo said, his voice smooth and confident. His words flowed effortlessly as he had practiced them countless times. The investors exchanged glances, nodding in agreement as they sipped their expensive whiskey, the clinking of glasses punctuating the air with a sense of triumph. As Rodrigo spoke, he scanned the room, his eyes flitting from one face to another. Each affirmation they offered felt like a validation of his success, a testament to the empire he had built from the ground up. Yet, beneath the surface of this carefully curated image of affluence, a gnawing emptiness lingered. The laughter sounded hollow in his ears, and the glimmer of luxury began to feel like a gilded cage. "Rodrigo, you're a genius," one of the investors, a portly man with a booming voice, exclaimed, slapping Rodrigo on the back with a force that nearly knocked him forward. "With your vision, we'll dominate the market." "Thank you, James," Rodrigo replied, forcing a smile. "But remember, this is just the beginning." As the meeting progressed, he felt increasingly disconnected from the celebration around him. The claps on his back felt more like chains binding him to a life he had meticulously crafted, but increasingly questioned. After the deal was finalized, Rodrigo dismissed the investors with a wave, the echoes of their praise still ringing in his ears. He stood in the empty office, staring out at the city below, where lives were being lived far removed from his own. A part of him longed to connect with the world beyond his glass walls, yet the thrill of power had always kept him anchored to his luxurious existence. "Rodrigo, shall I bring your car around?" his assistant Clara asked, peering through the door with an expectant look. "Yes, please," he replied, trying to shake off the unsettling thoughts clouding his mind. He grabbed his briefcase and headed towards the elevator, the polished marble floors reflecting his hurried movements. As the doors glided shut, he caught a glimpse of his reflection, a man dressed in a tailored suit, a picture of success, yet the eyes staring back at him betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. The drive home was routine, a familiar path that wound through the bustling streets of the city, but tonight, his driver took a shortcut through a neighborhood that was starkly different from the opulence he inhabited. Rodrigo leaned back in his seat, scrolling through emails, barely glancing out the window. The sights of poverty and struggle outside were merely a backdrop to his thoughts, shadows he had long learned to ignore. "Sir, do you want me to take a different route?" his driver asked, noticing the dilapidated buildings and the children playing in the dirt, their laughter mingling with the distant sounds of sirens. "No, this is fine," Rodrigo replied absent-mindedly, his mind still engrossed in business matters. He felt a disconnection from the world outside, a bubble of privilege that insulated him from the harsh realities of life. The beauty of his life was in the details, luxurious dinners, exclusive parties, and high-stakes negotiations, but the hollow feeling in his chest persisted, like an echo of a life he had never truly experienced. Suddenly, something caught his eye. As they passed a narrow alley, he spotted a woman bent over, rummaging through a pile of discarded boxes and trash. Her clothes were tattered, and her hair hung in disarray, framing a face that, despite its weariness, bore a fierce determination. Something about her struck a chord deep within him, breaking through the fog of indifference that had dulled his senses. "Stop the car," Rodrigo commanded, surprising even himself. The driver glanced back, confusion etched on his face, but he complied, pulling over to the side of the road. Rodrigo stepped out, a mix of curiosity and concern propelling him forward. As he approached, the woman looked up, startled, her eyes wide with surprise. For a brief moment they locked gazes, and Rodrigo felt a rush of emotion he couldn't quite define. It was as if the world around him faded, leaving only the two of them standing in the midst of chaos. "Excuse me," he began, his voice softer than he intended. "What are you doing here?" She hesitated, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "Just looking for something useful," she replied, her voice steady but edged with fatigue. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me," he urged, an inexplicable urge to delve deeper into her reality. "I work with a lot of people, and I'm always looking to understand more about their lives." The woman narrowed her eyes, skepticism evident on her face. "People like you don't usually care about people like me," she said, her tone defensive. "You see a suit, and you think I'm just a problem to be solved." Rodrigo was taken aback by her candor, a wave of guilt washing over him. He realized how often he had dismissed the struggles of those around him, preferring to remain cocooned in his world of wealth. "I'm not like that," he insisted, his voice firmer now. "I want to help. I just want to understand." She studied him for a moment, and he could see the walls she had built around herself. "My name is Anna," she finally said, her voice softer now, as if she was weighing her words carefully. "Rodrigo," he replied, offering a small smile. "And what brings you here, Anna?" She sighed, glancing back at the trash she was sifting through. "I lost my job a few months ago. I'm just trying to find something to feed my kids." The gravity of her words struck him like a lightning bolt, leaving him momentarily speechless. Here was a woman, standing in the remnants of society's neglect, fighting to provide for her family. He had spent the entire day sealing deals that would only add to his wealth, while she scavenged for scraps to survive. I didn't realize," he stammered, suddenly feeling the weight of his privilege. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Anna shook her head, a bitter smile playing on her lips. "No offense, but people like you have no idea how to really help people like me. You'll forget about me the moment you drive away." Rodrigo felt a sting of shame at her words. "I might surprise you," he said, a newfound determination igniting within him. "I want to understand, to make a difference. Just let me know how." The tension hung in the air, charged with unspoken possibilities. Anna looked at him, her expression softening slightly. "I'm not sure what you could do," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let me take you out for coffee," he suggested, surprising both of them. "Just to talk. I promise I'm not here to judge or dismiss. I genuinely want to know more about your life." Anna hesitated, glancing at the trash around them, then back at Rodrigo. "Fine," she finally said, a hint of curiosity creeping into her voice. "But don't expect me to reveal everything. I'm not sure what you'll do with what you find out." Rodrigo nodded, feeling a strange sense of hope blooming within him. "That's all I ask, Anna. Just a chance." As they walked towards the nearby cafe, he felt a shift within himself, a stirring of empathy that had long been dormant. In that moment, amidst the chaos of the city, he realized that perhaps this encounter was the beginning of something profound. The world outside his high-rise office was not just a backdrop, it was a tapestry of lives woven together in struggles and triumphs, and for the first time, he felt an urge to be a part of it. Rodrigo stepped out of the car, the air thick with the smell of refuse and despair. It was a stark contrast to the sanitized, polished world he was used to. He approached Anna, who was now kneeling beside a pile of discarded items, her hands delicately sifting through the debris. The sunlight caught the sweat on her brow, and her clothes bore the marks of her daily struggle, worn and faded, yet still carrying an air of resilience. "Excuse me," Rodrigo said, his voice slightly trembling with uncertainty. Anna looked up, her eyes wide with surprise, a mixture of confusion and wariness. She wasn't used to anyone interrupting her work, let alone a man in a tailored suit, so out of place in this environment. "Who are you?" she asked, her tone cautious but curious. "I'm Rodrigo," he replied, taking a step closer, careful not to invade her personal space. "I work at the company where you used to be employed. I saw you here and I wanted to talk." Anna's expression shifted from surprise to suspicion. "Why would you want to talk to me? I'm just doing what I need to survive." Rodrigo swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. I saw you rummaging through the trash and it struck me. I've been so absorbed in my own world, in my own problems, that I didn't realize how difficult things can get." She shook her head, a small laugh escaping her lips, tinged with bitterness. "You're not the first person to say that, and you won't be the last. But trust me, you wouldn't understand. You live in a different world." I want to understand, he insisted, his voice firm yet gentle. Please tell me what's going on. I want to help. Anna hesitated, her eyes narrowing as she assessed his sincerity. Help? How can you help me? You have no idea what it's like to be in my shoes. You don't know what it's like to have everything taken away from you. Rodrigo felt a pang of guilt. She was right. He didn't know. Then tell me, he urged. Please help me understand. With a heavy sigh, Anna turned back to the trash, her fingers continuing their search. I lost my job a few months ago, she began, her voice steady but laced with pain. The company downsized and I was one of the first to go. I had to find a way to put food on the table for my kids and take care of my sick mother. This is all I have left. She gestured toward the pile, her face a mask of determination mixed with resignation. Rodrigo felt his heart ache at her words. But there must be something I can do, he said, his tone pleading. Can I help you find another job? I could connect you with someone at my company. Anna paused, her hands stilling for a moment. Why would you do that? What do you have to gain from helping someone like me? Nothing, he replied, his voice earnest. I can't stand the thought of you struggling like this. I've been so caught up in my own life that I've ignored the people who work for me. I want to change that. She turned, her eyes searching his for any hint of deception. After a long moment, she finally spoke, her voice softening. I don't know if a job is what I need right now. My mother needs medicine, and my children need food. I'm just trying to get by, day by day. Rodrigo felt a lump in his throat. I can help with that too, he offered. I can give you some money for groceries and your mother's medicine. Please let me help. Anna recoiled slightly, shaking her head. No, I can't accept charity. I'm not looking for handouts. I just want to work and provide for my family. Then let me help you find work, he pressed, desperation creeping into his voice. You deserve more than this. You deserve a chance. As they stood amidst the filth, Rodrigo noticed the fire in Anna's eyes, a fierce determination that made him both respect and admire her. He realized he was standing before someone who had been dealt a cruel hand, but still refused to let life defeat her. Anna studied him, her expression softening ever so slightly. You really mean it, don't you? You really want to help? Yes, he affirmed, his voice steady. I do. After a beat, she sighed deeply, the weight of her reality settling heavily on her shoulders. Okay, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. But first, I need to know that you're not just doing this out of guilt or some misguided sense of obligation. I need to know that you genuinely care. Rodrigo felt a rush of emotion as he looked into her eyes. I care, Anna. I've spent so much time chasing money and power that I've forgotten what it means to be human. Meeting you today made me realize how disconnected I've become. I want to change that. I want to do better. Anna took a step back, her gaze flickering between hope and skepticism. We'll see, she replied quietly, brushing her hands against her jeans as if trying to wipe away the dirt of her circumstances. But if you truly want to help, then let's talk about what I need. Rodrigo nodded, grateful for the opportunity to make amends. Let's start with your mother's medicine. What does she need? As she began to explain, Rodrigo listened intently, absorbing every detail. He jotted down notes on his phone, determined to follow through on his promise. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose beyond the confines of his corporate empire. Anna, he said, interrupting her train of thought, you should know that I admire your strength. It's not easy to face what you're dealing with, and yet you're still here, fighting for your family. She looked at him, the hint of a smile breaking through her weary expression. Thank you, she said, her voice softening. But it doesn't feel like strength most days. Some days it feels like I'm just surviving. Surviving is strength, Rodrigo replied, and I want to help you thrive again. As they spoke, the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the alley. Rodrigo noticed how the light caught the dust in the air, beautiful in its own way, much like Anna's spirit. She had been through so much, yet still stood tall, determined to provide for her family against all odds. I'll be back tomorrow, he promised, feeling a renewed sense of determination. I'll bring the money for your mother's medicine, and we can talk more about job opportunities. I want to help you get back on your feet." Anna nodded slowly, the weight of her reality lingering in the air between them. "Thank you, Rodrigo. I appreciate it. But I still need to see if you're serious about this." Rodrigo smiled, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within him. "I am serious. I want to make a difference, starting with you." As he turned to leave, he glanced back one last time, catching Anna's eyes. In that moment, he understood that this encounter was more than just a chance meeting. It was the beginning of something transformative, not only for her but for him as well. The world he had built around himself had begun to crack, revealing the potential for true connection and compassion that lay beneath. Rodrigo stood in the middle of his lavish living room, the ambiance around him a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within. The soft glow of the designer lamps cast shadows on the walls, adorned with modern art pieces that had cost him a small fortune. Yet, despite the luxury surrounding him, he felt an unusual heaviness in his chest, a gnawing sense of guilt that he couldn't quite shake off. He had just returned from an encounter that had turned his world upside down, a brief conversation with Anna, a woman he had previously seen only as an employee, now transformed into a symbol of struggle and resilience. He paced the marble floor, his mind racing back to their conversation. Her eyes, filled with determination and sadness, haunted him. "I just need to provide for my family," she had said, her voice steady despite the desperation in her situation. He could still see her digging through the trash, sifting through remnants of a world that had cast her aside. How had he allowed himself to become so disconnected from the lives of the people who worked for him? He had always prided himself on being a successful businessman, but at what cost? What did success mean if it was built on the suffering of others? Taking a deep breath, Rodrigo walked over to his desk, the sleek surface littered with papers and documents that seemed trivial in comparison to the reality he had just witnessed. He grabbed his laptop and began typing, searching for community programs that could support families like Anna's. As he scrolled through various websites, he felt a renewed sense of purpose igniting within him. It wasn't enough to merely feel sorry for Anna or to acknowledge her struggles. He needed to take action. Hours passed as he researched tirelessly, discovering local charities, food banks, and shelters in desperate need of support. The more he read, the more he realized how much he had taken his own blessings for granted. He had always viewed philanthropy as a box to check off, an obligatory act for the wealthy. But now it felt like a calling. He envisioned a community where families like Anna's could find hope and stability, a place where no one would have to rummage through trash to survive. "Maybe I could host a charity event," he muttered to himself, the idea forming in his mind. "Invite influential people, raise awareness and gather funds for those in need." The thought electrified him. He envisioned an elegant gala, filled with glitz and glamour, but with a heart, a purpose that transcended the superficiality of wealth. He could invite his business associates and friends, and together they could contribute to a cause that truly mattered. Rodrigo picked up the phone, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. He called his event planner, a woman named Clara who had organized numerous high-profile events for him in the past. "Clara, it's Rodrigo. I need your help with something important," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "Of course, Rodrigo. What can I do for you?" Clara replied, her tone bright and professional. "I want to host a charity gala, something that focuses on helping struggling families in our community. I need your expertise to make it impactful," he explained, the words flowing out of him as he spoke. "A charity event? That's unexpected. I love it. When are you thinking of holding it?" Clara asked, her enthusiasm palpable. "Let's aim for next month. I want to gather as many people as possible, but I also want it to feel genuine. I want the guests to understand why we're doing this," Rodrigo emphasized, his resolve strengthening with each word. "Absolutely, I'll start working on the details right away. This is going to be amazing," Clara exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. After hanging up, Rodrigo felt a rush of adrenaline. He was determined to make this event not just another social gathering, but a movement, a catalyst for change. He envisioned sharing Anna's story, perhaps not directly, but in a way that would resonate with his guests. He wanted them to feel the urgency of the situation, to understand the realities faced by those living in the shadows of wealth. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Rodrigo dedicated himself to planning the event, meeting with Clara to discuss themes, venues, and guest lists. He reached out to local businesses for sponsorships, hoping to build a network of support that could rally around families like Anna's. Each conversation, each connection he made, reinforced the importance of what he was doing. It was more than just an event. It was a chance to foster empathy and understanding in a world often blinded by affluence. As the date of the gala approached, Rodrigo found himself oscillating between excitement and anxiety. He prepared his speech, wanting to convey his passion for the cause while being careful not to come off as patronizing. He practiced in front of a mirror, rehearsing the lines that would share Anna's story without compromising her dignity. On the day of the event, the venue sparkled with elegance. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the tables adorned with exquisite centerpieces. The sound of clinking glasses and laughter filled the air, but Rodrigo felt a knot in his stomach as he moved through the crowd. He welcomed guests, exchanged pleasantries, but his mind was elsewhere, focused on the mission he had set out to accomplish. As the time neared for him to take the stage, he felt a wave of nerves wash over him. Would they understand? Would they care? He looked out at the sea of faces. Business moguls, socialites, people who had never known struggle. But he reminded himself of Anna, her strength, her determination, her fight for her family. He could not let fear hold him back. Finally, the moment arrived. Rodrigo stepped onto the stage, the spotlight illuminating his face as the chatter subsided. He glanced at the audience, feeling the weight of their gazes upon him. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Tonight is not just about celebrating our successes, it's about acknowledging the struggles that exist in our community. It's about recognizing that wealth and privilege come with responsibility." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I want to share a story with you, a story of a woman named Anna." As he spoke, he painted a picture of Anna's life, her hardships, and her unwavering spirit. He emphasized the importance of community support and urged his guests to open their hearts to those in need. As he finished, he could see the impact of his words reflected in the eyes of his audience. There was a moment of silence before applause erupted, a powerful acknowledgement of the truth he had just shared. Rodrigo felt a surge of hope. Perhaps this event would indeed make a difference. The night continued, filled with generous donations and heartfelt conversations. Rodrigo mingled with guests, feeling a sense of camaraderie that had been missing from his life for so long. He realized that this was what he had been searching for, a connection to something greater than himself, a purpose that transcended mere success in business. As the evening drew to a close, Rodrigo felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. He had embarked on this journey seeking to help Anna, but in doing so he had discovered something profound about himself. The experience had opened his heart and mind, and he knew that this was just the beginning. He had found a new path, one that intertwined his fortune with the well-being of others. Rodrigo left the event feeling lighter, driven by the knowledge that he could make a real difference. He thought of Anna and the struggles she faced, knowing that he was now committed to uplifting not just her, but many others who were fighting similar battles. As he stepped out into the cool night air, he realized that true wealth was not measured by the size of his bank account, but by the impact he could have on the lives of those around him. And for the first time in a long while, he felt truly rich. The night of the charity gala had finally arrived, and Rodrigo stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie with steady hands, though his heart raced with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The grand ballroom of the hotel was adorned with elegant decorations. Silk drapes hung from the ceiling, gold accents glimmered under the soft lights, and tables were lavishly set with crystal glassware and exquisite floral arrangements. It was a far cry from the struggling neighborhood he had driven through just days before, a stark reminder of the disparity he now felt compelled to address. As he descended the sweeping staircase, Rodrigo couldn't shake the feeling of disconnect that gnawed at him. The clinking of glasses and the hum of laughter filled the air, but it felt hollow compared to the purpose that had driven him to organize this event. The wealth surrounding him seemed excessive, and he recalled Anna's face as she rummaged through the trash, her determination juxtaposing the opulence of the gala. He had come to understand that this night was not just about raising funds, it was about bridging the gap between two worlds that rarely intersected. "Rodrigo, over here," a voice called out, snapping him from his reverie. It was Carlos, his business partner, waving him over with an enthusiastic grin. Carlos was dressed impeccably, his tailored suit fitting him perfectly. Rodrigo forced a smile and walked over, shaking hands with a few other attendees along the way. "Are you ready for your speech?" Carlos asked, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Rodrigo nodded, though his stomach churned. "I think so. I just hope I can convey the urgency of the cause." "You will," Carlos assured him, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "You've got this. Just remember, you're not alone in this fight. We're all here to support you and what you're trying to accomplish." As the evening progressed, Rodrigo mingled with guests, exchanging pleasantries and discussing business ventures, but his mind was elsewhere. He watched the crowd, noticing the lavishness of their attire, the sparkling jewelry, and the expensive drinks they savored. Each laugh felt like a reminder of the struggles of people like Anna, who fought daily to make ends meet. Finally, it was time for Rodrigo to take the stage. He stepped up to the podium, the lights dimming slightly to focus the audience's attention on him. The murmurs quieted, and for a moment he felt the weight of every eye on him. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak, his voice steady, yet filled with emotion. "Thank you all for joining me tonight," he started, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "We are gathered here not just to enjoy a lavish evening, but to make a difference in the lives of those who need it most." He paused, searching for the right words. "Recently I had an encounter that changed my perspective completely." He hesitated, but the memory of Anna's determined eyes urged him on. "I met a woman named Anna, who, like many, is struggling to provide for her family. Her story is one of resilience and strength, but it is also a story of hardship that far too many people face every day." He could see the audience shifting in their seats, intrigued. "I won't go into details about her life," he continued, "as I want to respect her privacy, but I will say that her determination to support her sick mother and 2 young children inspired me to take action. It made me realize how disconnected I had become from the lives of my employees and the community around us." Rodrigo felt a surge of emotion as he spoke, the sincerity in his voice resonating with the crowd. "Tonight, I ask you to open your hearts and wallets. Every dollar raised here will go directly to programs that support families like Anna's, ensuring they receive the assistance they need to thrive, not just survive." As he concluded his speech, Rodrigo noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The audience was no longer just attendees at a gala. They were potential allies in a cause that mattered. Applause erupted, and he felt a warmth spread through him, a validation of the journey he had embarked upon. "Let's make a difference together," he urged, stepping back from the podium. The crowd responded with cheers and clinking glasses, energized by the call to action. As the evening unfolded, donations began pouring in. Rodrigo watched in awe as individuals he had once considered aloof and disconnected opened their hearts to the cause. He saw guests bidding generously in the silent auction, their enthusiasm palpable. Each donation felt like a personal victory, a step toward bridging the gap between his world and Anna's. In the midst of the event, Rodrigo's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A message from Anna. His heart raced with anticipation as he opened it. "Thank you, Rodrigo. Your kindness means the world to me and my family. I can't believe what you're doing. I'm so grateful," the message read. His chest tightened, and he felt a swell of emotion. He quickly typed a reply, his fingers trembling slightly. "You deserve this, Anna. Your strength inspires me every day. I'll keep fighting for you and everyone like you." He hit send and looked up, a newfound determination coursing through him. This was more than just a charity event, it was a turning point. He realized that the connections he was forming, the lives he aimed to uplift, were what truly mattered. The wealth he had once valued so highly seemed trivial now, overshadowed by the impact he could have on the world around him. As the night wore on, Rodrigo felt a sense of hope blossom within him. He mingled with guests, sharing Anna's story, albeit anonymously, and urging them to contribute. Each conversation was a step toward raising awareness, a chance to inspire others to join the cause. The more he spoke, the more he felt the walls of his old life crumble, replaced by a vision of a future where he could make a meaningful difference. Finally, as the gala drew to a close, Rodrigo stood at the balcony, looking out over the city. The lights twinkled like stars against the dark sky, a beautiful yet stark reminder of the lives that existed beyond the glittering facade. He thought of Anna and her family, of the struggles they faced, and of the hope he now had for their future. "Rodrigo," Carlos called, joining him on the balcony. "You did it. The donations exceeded our expectations." Rodrigo turned to him, a wide smile breaking across his face. "I couldn't have done it without the support of everyone here. It's incredible to see how willing people are to help." "But it's your passion that inspired them," Carlos replied, clapping him on the back. "You've truly changed the narrative tonight." Rodrigo nodded, feeling a sense of purpose wash over him. "This is just the beginning, Carlos. I want to do more. I need to do more." With that thought echoing in his mind, Rodrigo felt a surge of motivation. He knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to embrace it. He realized that true wealth was not found in the luxury surrounding him, but in the connections he forged and the lives he touched. And as he stood there, the weight of his newfound responsibility settled upon him. But instead of feeling burdened, he felt liberated. The path ahead was clear, and he was determined to walk it, hand in hand with people like Anna, whose stories would no longer remain unheard. Rodrigo's heart raced as he pulled up to Anna's modest home, the weight of the money he had collected for her family pressing against his chest like a heavy stone. He had never set foot in a place like this, a small worn-down house nestled between others that bore the scars of neglect and hardship. The peeling paint and overgrown weeds spoke volumes of the struggles faced by the families in this neighborhood. He stepped out of his sleek black car, the contrast between his polished appearance and the surroundings stark. As he approached the front door, Rodrigo could hear the faint sounds of children laughing inside, a jarring reminder of the innocence that existed despite the hardships. He knocked gently, and after a moment, Anna opened the door, her expression shifting from surprise to wariness. "Mr. Rodrigo?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Anna," he replied softly, forcing a smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "No, not at all. Please, come in." She stepped aside, allowing him to enter. The interior was modest but filled with warmth, the scent of something simmering on the stove wafted through the air. The walls were adorned with family photos, each frame capturing moments of joy that seemed to contrast sharply with their current reality. "Your children?" Rodrigo inquired, glancing around. "Yes, they're playing in the back. They love to pretend they're explorers," Anna said, a hint of pride creeping into her voice. "They have such imaginations." Rodrigo nodded, taking a seat at the small dining table, which was cluttered with papers and a few children's drawings. "I wanted to come by and deliver the funds raised from the charity event personally." Anna's eyes widened, and she instinctively shook her head. "Oh, I can't accept this, Mr. Rodrigo. It's too much." "Anna," he insisted gently, leaning forward. "You need this money. You and your family deserve it. Please, accept it." She hesitated, her brow furrowing with concern. "I don't want to be a burden. I've always worked hard to provide for my family. Accepting charity feels wrong." Rodrigo could sense her pride and resilience, traits he admired deeply. "It's not charity if it's meant to help you. Think of it as a stepping stone. You're not just receiving, you're allowing others to help you. You're giving people the chance to make a difference." Anna remained silent, her gaze dropping to her hands as if weighing the decision. "But what if I can't find a way to repay you?" she finally asked, her voice trembling slightly. "It's not about repayment," he replied, his tone firm yet compassionate. "It's about building a community. I want to help you find a stable job, something that can provide for your family long term. Let's work together on this." She looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. You really mean that? Absolutely, Rodrigo affirmed, feeling a surge of determination. I want to help you get back on your feet. You're strong, Anna. Together we can figure something out. Anna wiped her eyes, a flicker of hope igniting in her expression. I've always dreamed of starting my own catering business. I love to cook. It's my passion, and I know I could make something beautiful out of it. Rodrigo's interest piqued. Catering, that sounds wonderful. Why haven't you pursued it? I didn't have the resources or the time, she admitted, a hint of regret in her voice. When I lost my job, I thought it was the end of my dreams. I didn't think I could start something new. Rodrigo leaned back in his chair, contemplating her words. What if we could change that? With the funds from the charity event, we could look into getting you started. Perhaps we can even create a business plan together. Anna's eyes widened in disbelief. You would really help me do that? Of course, you have a talent that deserves to be shared. Let's turn that passion into something sustainable. I'll mentor you through the process, he said, excitement creeping into his voice. Anna's face lit up with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. But what if it fails? What if I'm not good enough? Rodrigo shook his head, his expression earnest. Failure is part of the journey. What matters is that you try. I believe in you, Anna. You have the strength and the determination. It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. For the first time since he had met her, Anna smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Thank you, Mr. Rodrigo. I don't know how to express my gratitude. Call me Rodrigo, he replied, warmth flooding his voice. We're in this together. They spent the next hour brainstorming ideas, and Anna's enthusiasm began to shine through as she detailed her vision for the catering business. She spoke of recipes passed down through generations, of flavors and aromas that could bring people together. Rodrigo listened intently, his heart swelling with admiration for her passion. What kind of events would you cater? He asked, leaning forward, eager to learn more. Weddings, birthdays, community events, Anna replied, her voice growing more animated. I can create a menu that reflects our culture, dishes that tell a story. That's beautiful, Anna. People will connect with that, Rodrigo said, his mind racing with possibilities. We can start small, perhaps with some local events. You could even consider a pop-up stand to test the waters. Yes, a pop-up. I've seen some in the market and they always seem to draw a crowd, Anna exclaimed, her excitement palpable. I could make some of my signature dishes. Rodrigo could see the spark in her eyes, the determination igniting a fire within her that had long been dormant. Let's make a list of what you need to get started. We can set milestones and take it step by step. I'll help you with the funding and the logistics. As they continued to discuss details, Rodrigo felt a connection growing between them, a bond forged in shared dreams and aspirations. He was no longer just a businessman. He found himself becoming a mentor and a friend. The walls that had once separated them began to crumble, leaving space for understanding and compassion. Thank you for believing in me, Rodrigo, Anna said softly, her voice tinged with emotion. I've felt so lost for so long. You've given me hope again. Rodrigo shrugged off the compliment, feeling a warmth spread through him. You've always had that hope within you, Anna. I just helped you see it again. As the sun began to set outside, casting a golden glow through the small window, Anna stood up and began to gather her children who had been playing quietly in the corner. I'd like you to meet them, she said, her voice filled with pride. Rodrigo smiled, eager to connect further. I'd love that. As Anna called her children over, Rodrigo couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose blossoming within him. He had arrived at her home to deliver assistance, but what he discovered was far more profound. A friendship, a shared journey, and the realization that true wealth was not measured in money, but in the lives they could touch together. Anna stood alone in her small kitchen, the smell of simmering broth wafting through the air. She had always found solace in cooking, but today the warmth of the kitchen felt like a distant memory. Her heart raced and her mind swirled with worry as she glanced at the clock. Time was slipping through her fingers, just like the hope she had been clinging to. Her mother's sudden illness had thrown their world into chaos, and the weight of her circumstances pressed down on her like a heavy stone. As she stirred the pot, her phone buzzed on the countertop, shattering the silence. It was a message from Rodrigo. "I'm on my way, just checking in. How are you holding up?" His words felt like a lifeline in the stormy sea of her thoughts. Anna hesitated for a moment before typing back, "I'm okay, just trying to keep things together." But deep down she knew she was struggling. The reality of her mother's condition was too much to bear alone. When Rodrigo arrived, he found Anna sitting at the kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly together. Her eyes were red-rimmed, evidence of sleepless nights filled with worry. He stepped into the room, his expression shifting from concern to determination. "Anna," he said softly, crossing the small space between them, "I'm here for you. You don't have to go through this alone." Anna looked up, her heart swelling with gratitude and despair all at once. "I appreciate it, Rodrigo, but I don't want to burden you with my problems. You have your own life to manage." Her voice trembled as she spoke, the weight of her pride and fear colliding. Rodrigo shook his head, his brow furrowed in concern. "You're not a burden. You're my friend. I want to help you. What can I do?" He sat down across from her, his gaze steady, revealing the depth of his sincerity. Anna sighed, the reality of her situation crashing down around her. "She needs medical attention, and I can't afford the bills. I've tried everything, but it's like I'm stuck in quicksand. The more I struggle, the deeper I sink." Tears threatened to spill from her eyes, and she quickly wiped them away, not wanting to let Rodrigo see her vulnerability. Rodrigo leaned forward, his heart aching for her. "Let me help with the medical expenses. I can cover it. You shouldn't have to choose between your mother's health and your dignity." His offer hung in the air, heavy with the weight of unspoken emotions. Anna's breath caught in her throat. "I can't accept that. It's too much. I don't want to owe you." The thought of being indebted to him terrified her, but the desperation in her heart was undeniable. Her mother's life hung in the balance, and she was grasping at straws. "You wouldn't be owing me anything," Rodrigo insisted, his voice firm yet gentle. "You're family, and family looks out for one another. Please let me help." He reached out, placing his hand over hers, providing a sense of comfort that she desperately needed. For a moment they sat in silence, the weight of the moment settling between them. Anna felt the warmth of Rodrigo's hand, a stark contrast to the cold reality of her life. She squeezed his hand gently, her resolve crumbling. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you, Rodrigo. I don't know how to express my gratitude." Rodrigo smiled softly, relief flooding through him. "You don't have to. Just focus on your mom. I'll take care of the rest." He stood up, determination etched on his face. "Let's get her to a doctor. We can figure this out together." They rushed to the hospital, the car ride filled with a mix of anxious silence and quiet conversations. Rodrigo reassured Anna, reminding her that they were in this together. "You're doing everything you can for her," he said, glancing at her from time to time. "That's what matters most." When they arrived, the sterile smell of antiseptic greeted them. Hannah's heart raced as they navigated through the hallways, searching for the right department. Finally, they reached the emergency room, where her mother lay on a stretcher, surrounded by medical staff. Anna's heart ached at the sight. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Mom?" Her mother's eyes fluttered open at the sound of her voice, a weak smile breaking through the pain. "Anna, my sweet girl," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, don't apologize," Anna urged, tears streaming down her face. "We're going to take care of you. Rodrigo is here to help." She glanced back at Rodrigo, who stood nearby, his expression one of compassion and strength. "Hello, Mrs. Silva," Rodrigo said, stepping closer, his demeanor respectful. "I'm Rodrigo, Anna's friend. We're going to get you the help you need." His words were firm, filled with the promise of support. Anna's mother looked at him with weary eyes, a mixture of gratitude and concern etched on her face. "Thank you, dear, but it's a lot to ask." Rodrigo shook his head, cutting her off gently. "It's not a burden. I insist. Your family." The sincerity in his voice was palpable, and Anna felt a wave of relief wash over her. As the doctors began their assessments, Anna felt a mix of fear and hope. She held her mother's hand tightly, drawing strength from the connection between them. "We're going to get through this," she whispered, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. Hours passed and the doctors finally emerged, providing an update on her mother's condition. "We're going to need to admit her for further observation," the doctor explained, his tone serious but reassuring. "She has pneumonia, but with the right treatment, she should recover." Anna's heart soared at the news. "Thank you," she breathed, relief flooding through her. Rodrigo stood beside her, his presence a source of comfort. As they prepared to settle in for the night, Anna felt an unexpected wave of gratitude for Rodrigo. He had become more than just a friend. He was a lifeline in her darkest hour. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. Rodrigo smiled softly, the warmth in his eyes reflecting the bond they had formed. "You don't have to thank me. I've learned so much from you, Anna. Your strength, your determination, it inspires me." Just then, a familiar face appeared in the doorway. Anna's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the nurse. It was someone she hadn't seen in years. "Anna?" the nurse called, her voice filled with surprise and recognition. "Is that you?" Anna's eyes widened in disbelief. "Maria, is that you?" The nurse stepped closer, and Anna felt a rush of nostalgia. "Wow, you've grown up so much," Maria exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "I used to take care of you when you were little. Your mother—" Her voice trailed off as she glanced at Anna's mom, who was being wheeled into a room. Anna's heart raced as she processed the connection. "You were my mother's nurse?" Maria nodded, memories flooding back. "Yes, I was there when she took care of you. You were such a sweet child." Then she turned to Rodrigo, her smile fading slightly. "And you are?" "I'm Rodrigo," he said, extending a hand. "A friend of Anna's." Maria's eyes widened in recognition. "Rodrigo, the businessman. I've heard so much about you." Anna's heart sank as Maria's gaze flickered between them. The realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. Rodrigo didn't just represent wealth and privilege, he had also been intertwined with her family's past. As the pieces clicked together, Anna felt a rush of emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. "Rodrigo, my mother, she was your nanny, wasn't she?" Rodrigo's eyes widened in shock, the weight of their shared history settling heavily on his shoulders. "I had no idea," he breathed, his expression transforming from surprise to profound realization. "She took care of me when I was a child. I remember her kindness." Anna felt her heart swell with a mix of gratitude and confusion. "And now, here we are. I never imagined we'd be connected like this." Rodrigo nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't either. It's like the universe brought us together for a reason." In that moment, everything shifted. The invisible threads binding their lives together tightened, weaving a tapestry of shared history and newfound purpose. Rodrigo understood that his life had come full circle, and Anna realized that the weight of her struggles was no longer hers to bear alone. "I promise to help your family," Rodrigo vowed, his eyes shining with sincerity. "We'll make sure your mother gets the best care, and I'll do whatever it takes to support you both." Anna felt a surge of hope flood her heart. "Thank you, Rodrigo. I can't believe this is happening. You've changed my life." "No, Anna," he replied, his voice filled with warmth. "You've changed mine. I've learned that true wealth is not measured by money, but by the connections we make and the lives we touch." As they stood together, united in their shared purpose, Anna felt a renewed sense of strength. With Rodrigo by her side, she